Good morning, welcome back. And it's really nice to see all of you so fresh. Yeah, no one seems to have a serious hangover. That's good. It was not like that last year. Maybe I should not come with any details, then maybe somebody in the audience will be a little bit, okay. Good. It's a pleasure to stand here today and introduce Cesar, who I now have known for quite some years. We met the first time here in Brazil, actually in Brasilia, where we was invited for Smart Grid 2014 by the Brazilian Foreign Ministry that have arranged a seminar week on Smart Grid. So that was very interesting, and with a lot of speakers that week. And since then, we have had the pleasure of collaborating. And we also had the pleasure that you have been in our PSD committee a number of times. So I've always been reading a lot of Cesar's research with great interest, and then also the work with agent-based simulation on energy markets and the software that was developed for it. So that have been very interesting. But today it's a little bit different, because today we are going to hear about explainable AI. So I look very much forward to your keynote speak. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for being here after yesterday dinners. And both, thank you very much for remembering those activities in Brasilia. In fact, it was a very good collaboration for me with Brazil. And after that, I had several projects, and I have been living very good experiences with our colleagues here in Brazil. And also I had the chance to meet Bo, as you said, and also after that we had a very good collaboration. And about PhD committees, I believe I will remember to say something a little bit later. So now I need to change the slide. And today my talk is indeed about explainable AI. So let's see what I can do with the time I have. I have make it short, so let us begin. I've been working for many years in power and energy systems. It's my main area of applications, but based on AI models. And we have been working with many different models, techniques of artificial intelligence. Some of them are not so much explored in the power and energy field. So I would say that those that are more in the center are more explored when it comes to power and energy, the others not so much. But we are covering all these ones that are marked in red over there. And I would like to refer to different approaches, which in fact are very, very different. What is data-driven approaches and that knowledge-based ones? So let's see. I'd like to begin with presenting to you very briefly some of our platforms that we have been developing for a long time. We have this tradition there. We pick a project and we take it for a good number of years. So some of our projects began on the 19th, and they are still going on. That's the case for simulation of electricity markets. And for this one, I believe it has now more than 10 years. So this is an infrastructure for real-time management and simulation of power and energy algorithms, systems, and so on. It has these 4 layers. And as you can see, the intelligent layer is the top one. There we have all the algorithms. But then we have the infrastructure itself based on multi-agent systems. We put there all the physical components, including the buildings, for instance, and the network. And finally, the bottom layer is for everything we don't have physically. So we have real-time simulation there. As you know, real-time simulation for power and energy is quite difficult. So we use some of our algorithms and models, but also we use a professional platform, which is Opal RT. We use Power Hardware in Loop for that. And a different vision of this infrastructure, just to highlight that we use a contextual approach. We have a mechanism to balance the efficiency and the effectiveness, because we need to do everything in real time. And also, we must dynamically adjust this balance, because maybe I have little time to solve a problem, so I go to the fast way to do it. And for that, we are still using agents and multi-agent systems. And we came to the conclusion that it is not enough to have one multi-agent system. So we have worked a lot in the past few years developing models for a society of multi-agent systems. And this was the MAS project, which brought us some good insights on this topic and made our platform much more performing than before. And just a brief mention also to this ecosystem that is quite recent. It has about 2 years. And this is an automatic and intelligent way of managing all our agents. Either they are single agents or in the scope of one or several multi-agent systems. For instance, when I want to model an energy community, an aggregator, a virtual power producer, I need to have a multi-agent system, but sometimes it must be so dynamic that the members of that multi-agent systems are not remaining on the same multi-agent for long. So they keep moving from one multi-agent system to the other, and of course from one machine to the other. So this is a nice way to model it and also to make it more intelligent and more efficient. Just to give you an idea, we have a building. It's not a very nice building, but it's the building of our dreams, because we can do almost everything when it comes to install our equipment there. We have access there 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. We can go in and go out. It's the only building in the campus where that is possible. And we have been adapting a lot of hardware. Our work is both on software and hardware, mostly on software, but all this hardware is used and is controlled by our software. And for hardware, we have developed many things. But for instance, another intelligent or smart plug, you can buy it in supermarket today, of course. We believe that ours is a little bit different because it is modeled to cope with agents and multi-agent systems. So this smart plug is aware of the environment. And also we have some installations for peer-to-peer transactions, for instance, that we have been using a lot lately, namely to model energy communities. And these are some items, namely this is a board on the wall, but also you can use it on your mobile, you can use it on your laptop, your tablet, and we can use the card, the university card, to control most of the things. So we don't use key. We usually use our mobile and our university card. And this is bought piece by piece. This is the general components that we can buy, but then we put there our work, our algorithms. So it's a homemade system, not a bot system. C2C is click to control, also made by us. And again, we can use it in any platform. And our researchers are using it daily on their work in the offices to be aware of many things regarding energy, but also security, physical security, and controlling, for instance, the temperature in the room. To open the doors, they can open doors in this platform also, and if they have permission. So it is working for, I would say, 5 or 6 years now. Now, difficulties. Of course, there are difficulties, and we have to use some data-driven approaches. And data-driven approaches are very nice. They are very nice because now everybody knows what AI is. At least they know the name, right? And this happened before this boom, but this boom, in fact, is caused by data-driven, and I would say solely by data-driven models and applications. So today, when we hear about AI, we are mostly hearing about data-driven applications, and they are nice. They are nice because most of the times they give us good results. They are efficient, so people are happy because they put the data. There is something there which is a mystery, and then we have good results. So everyone is happy. We are not. We are not, in fact. We are worried about it because, in fact, in many situations, it's dangerous. We don't know how those results appear. We are not able to explain those results. So we have many questions, more questions than answers, of course. Totally dependent on the quality of the training set. This means the historic data. So more data, maybe it is not better data. It's a worry if you don't have data. Of course, you cannot work. But if there is data, we should ask, is this good data to work with? So it's difficult. Also, we should ask how we should learn, make these models learn, but also how should we make them forget? Because they learn wrong things, as we learn wrong things, but we forgot. We forgot our mistakes, right? In fact, we don't forget our mistakes. We don't forget usually our mistakes. And that's why we learned to forget what we learned, and it is wrong. But this is very difficult with these data-driven approaches. They are black box models, so we don't understand why they are as they are, and there is a lack of explainability. And why not using knowledge? What we know is usually very important, and these kind of approaches have difficulties in using this knowledge. So we need to explain AI-based solutions, what they suggest, the actions they take. This is clear these days, I believe. Which is not clear is how we should do it in practice, because there are already many models, but in practice, how could these models be used and be useful, actually useful? So we have several goals for our framework for explainability, to allow explanations to be dynamically created and adapted to the users, to use different techniques for the explanations, to display these explanations in different formats, to support user profiles, because each kind of user will need a different kind of explanation. And finally, we must put this to work in practice and supporting our real-time systems. So, some ideas to work. We want to have intelligent solutions, but intelligent solutions depend a lot on the context, which is a reality, because if we have some kind of behavior, maybe it's a very intelligent behavior under one context, but it is not intelligent behavior under a different context. So all of these should consider the particular situation that we are facing. Then we must learn over time, of course. We must learn with experience, but how and when should we retrain our models? And deciding on that should pay attention to our energy consumption, because we are seeing that we want to save energy, and this has been said yesterday here. We want to save energy, and we are wasting energy. We don't need to retrain every day or every hour or every quarter. Reinforcement learning is a good technique, and we have been using it a lot. We should and we want to keep the real-time performance of the system. Not everything works in real time. Of course, we have a back office, but the system itself must work in real time. And we have not only machine learning, but automated learning, because usually machine learning is not so automated and it requires a lot of human effort. So we came with a proposal. And usually in these talks, I choose one big European project. But for this, I have chosen a national project. This is a project funded by our National Science Foundation. And most of our projects are with a lot of partners, with industry partners and with academic partners. And it's very good. But for this project, we are alone in the project. So we can sit, discuss, make some experiences, and learn. And in fact, we have been learning a lot from these projects that are more kind of basic research. So this is what we propose as a model for the whole project. So I have the real-time system. In this case, the application is to an intelligent building. We want to do the real-time energy management in the building, and we want to make sure that this is automated, this is done in real time, and that we can pick the errors or the weird decisions that are made by the system. It is automatic, so the operator does not say, yes, you can do, no, you can't do it. The system is just automated, but in back office, we can look at it and identify some situations and go back and make our knowledge base better and make our models better. That's what we are doing. We are doing this with semantics, and today I don't have time to speak about semantics, but in fact, they are very important for this project and for explainability. We have an inference engine to put that working, and of course, we have the explainable AI part that I will mostly be addressing here today. And as I said, the system takes real-time actions, automated real-time actions, and in back office, I have the validation by the users, and those users can be normal users, but also the building managers, the experts, and so on. These are the project's objectives. I won't go in detail, but of course, we want to empower consumers. This is important because we want them to participate, to actively participate in the energy transition, but they don't have the means to do that. So someone has to empower them, and this is important in our project. We want this real-time interaction, continuous learning, explainability, an efficient use of the knowledge we have, not just data, but knowledge. And we want to validate this in a cyber-physical system. In our case, it is a building, an actual building. And of course, when it comes to explainability, we want it to be transparent. We want it to adapt to the users, namely, but also to the situation. And we at the end of the day, want that users can trust AI and AI solutions. So now I come back to the contextual learning, because we learned that this is really important. For many years, we have been developing solutions that were not really contextual solutions, and in fact, they fail in many situations. But when it comes to an automated system, they cannot fail. So they must adapt to every situation, and that's why contextual models are so important to attain these goals. So now we are working with automated contextual learning and with different sources for identifying those contexts. Just a small example. We have been experimenting with, for instance, many models for consumption, energy consumption forecasting. In this experience, we had more than 100 models for the forecasting of the energy consumption in the building. And then here, I just pick the best 10 models. And what we see is that the models that perform the best are the models that consider some kind of contextual data as features. So this is important. Nevertheless, our contextual approach does not solely come from the contextual data, but also it comes from all the rules that we have in the system and that enable the system to identify the context it's working in each moment. So we came with this system, which is EI Build Framework for Explainable AI for a building. We have used different platforms to build it. And as you can say, we have different kinds of explanation. Our final goal, in fact, is natural language, and we are working on that. We are working with different models for explainability. A lot of them that exist, we are testing them and using them, and we are also using some model-specific models for explainability. So we are using, for instance, tools that are very, very well known, LIME and SHAP. LIME for local explainability and SHAP for global explainability. And for meteoristics, we are using MAP Elite. And then we are using some personalized, let's say, models depending on the data-driven model that we want to explain. This is our framework. It has been conceived to attain the goals of this particular project. And for that, for instance, I have to evaluate the performance of my models. That's what I've shown you before with the consumption forecasting model. But also I want to enhance the trust in energy management. So I want the user to look at the solutions of our system and say, this is not much different from human behavior. Maybe it's better in many occasions, but I don't see here many errors, many mistakes that a human would not do, because humans also, we do mistakes, of course. Just to tell you that, of course, we are programming a lot. We are using logic-based programming. We are programming all the semantic rules in system. And for instance, for the explanations, they depend on the user profiles. So for each explanation, we have rules, and we build and generate the explanation according to those rules and according to our user profile. This is an aspect of the interface of the system, and then the user can register itself so that I can build their profile, and they can use all the options. They can see most of the things that are inside the system, depending on their permission, because of course, a normal user has very different needs when it comes to explanations when compared with an expert in energy management. So, what we have also done is to automate the reports for explainability. So we pick everything we have and we try to make an intelligent interpretation of all the results we have. These integrate all the explainability models we are using. Also, it integrates the statistical validation of the results. And of course, it has several benefits, namely it replaces the manual analysis almost completely. It provides deep insights and it saves the experts time. And we know that experts usually have very few time to deal with this kind of analysis. And of course, we hope it enhances efficiency and decision making. So the users can have full automated reports that are generated by the system and which are not simply a mix of the individual results. They are an intelligent interpretation of the results we have. This is an example of some texts that an expert can ask and get. Of course, we have texts and we have graphs because this is important for people to visualize the information and the results in graphs. And graphs are very different for regular users of the building and for energy managers of the building and then for experts. Just a few words about our research center. We are settled in Porto, in Portugal. This is the building I've shown you before. It's in fact a kind of living lab. You are invited if you want to go there. We are quite open and in fact we receive a lot of people. And we have the pleasure of receiving people from around the world and also very pleased because a good number of people from Brazil with whom we can speak in Portuguese are going there. Usually we have Brazilian colleagues there, students, but also professors for a long time. I would say if you go there, we always have not less than 10 people from Brazil, just for the energy part of our center. And one of those visitors, it is an American colleague that I knew for many years, but did not know our center. He came to Lisbon and he told me, I want to go to your center. And I told him, okay, it's 300 kilometers, but okay, we go there. And he enjoyed, in fact, it a lot. And I registered his sentence because I believe it reflects what we like to be our center. And he said, what a joy it must be to come here to work every day. So I would like to believe that this is true for our researchers and for our visitors that are staying there. And usually I tell them that we run on motivation. That's our fuel. Our fuel is motivation. It's not the money that comes from the project. It's not the number of citations of our papers. It's just our motivation. Very briefly, some initiatives that may be interesting for you. We have been creating and participating in many initiatives, namely some of that for open data sets and algorithms. Also, we have been organizing a good number of competitions, namely in IEEE and other conferences, and I have here some links that then I can send you if you are interested. This is just a reference to our projects and to our partners. As I told you, this project, we are alone in this project, but we have learned from our partners. So it's very important for us to have not only academic partners, but industrial partners, and we are working with a lot of industrial partners, more than 100 companies, more than 12 countries in the last 5 years. So you asked for a bio. This is my bio. I would say that I prefer the bio on the top. It's in Portuguese because the original text in Portuguese, it was for this book that they have published it. And I believe that the quality of the Portuguese text is much better, of course, but I have translated it to English. And this is the traditional one. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for a very interesting talk. I think we can take a question or two if we have. Yes.
Thank you for the nice presentation. I have a question on explainability. So most of the explainable AI methods that you talked about and that are in the literature seem to be post-hoc explainable methods. So you train the model and then you try to look for a relationship between the features and the target variable. And it seems that their performance is kind of related to the accuracy of your model training. So the explanation changes with the model training. So in that context, how reliable are these explanations? If I have a different training algorithm, it means the explanation is different, right? So the bigger question is, are these explainable methods really helping us to learn and make our models better? Yeah.
Thank you. Very, very good question. Thank you for that. First of all, when we retrain our model, in fact, our model becomes different because it's a fresh new model. And this is why I usually tell that forgetting the mistakes is so difficult, because sometimes people retrain the model and they say it will be okay, and this is not true, because I don't know. Maybe it learns again the same mistakes or the other mistakes that it can learn. But when it comes to these explainability models that are there and that we can use, I would say they are reliable in the sense that they are mathematically correct. They can have as outcome these values, these figures for the importance of each feature, either globally or locally. What I believe is that just having these results is not really an explanation. There is no human being that would classify that as an explanation. It's additional information. It's a good set of results. And this is why we have been working in the interpretation of those results, because of course, we can show the graphics directly, but usually users don't care too much about those graphics that come directly from those methods. So that's why the intelligent interpretation is important. For instance, one thing that we are working on is to understand if I run a lot of cases, and this means a lot of computational processing and many, many hours of simulations. Maybe you can find a pattern for the importance of each feature, okay? If I have many, many, many simulations, maybe I can find a pattern, and I can tell the users. But then I'm more interested in the exception. Why in some cases the explanation should be different, why the contribution of the features is so different in some situations. And we are trying to correlate that set of exceptions with maybe forecasting that are not so good as the others, or forecasting that are much better than the others. That's the kind of intelligent interpretation we are doing. So with that, I believe we can get to a good explanations for human beings, not just those figures and those graphs that come automatically.
Thank you. I just also have one question or reflection listening to your talk. Over the years, I have been participating in building a number of buildings. And what drives the automation of the buildings are always minimizing cost and meet minimal functionality. Also for future minimizing the maintenance cost. So one story I really like to tell is about light control in an office, in a meeting room, where actually they linked the control of the air conditioning to whether the light was turned on or off. And that's really interesting in July in Denmark, because it's very, very warm then in that meeting room, because the light will never be turned on. So I was wondering, based on this, when I was see your description of the rules for explanation, if it would be possible to use, when you make these explanation rules for how the system or the AI-based control is going to work, if that could be used to evaluate the cyber part of the cyber-physical system, such that it might be possible to go back and tell the building owner that what the choices you are making now will make it very difficult to implement a very useful, intelligent control of your building. Because it's so difficult to come afterwards and just, you can explain it,
Yes.
right? But it's somehow too late.
Yes, we are trying. It's a very good point. You have a very good point there, because at the end of the day, the rules that are made by humans, also they should be revised. And of course, in some situations, we don't come to the best results. We have some features in our systems that go a little bit there. When I show you the back office, in fact, what we have is the analysis of the performance of the system. And there we have the identification of some weak points that come from solutions of the system, either from the data-driven approach, but also from the overall system. So we comment on it. I cannot tell you that I have very good examples for that, but for instance, we have one feature in system for some displays we have in the wall, because these displays are in a kind of hole with a lot of windows, and sometimes people want to see what is in the display and they cannot, just because the shades in the windows are open. So we should try to lower these shades. And things like that, the system can do, because there is a rule that says during the day we have sun outside, we have light, so keep the shades open. But in fact, if we want to see the display, we should lower a little bit the shade. So we have some experiences that, but not the overall solution. But it's a very good, I see by experience, because in fact, it's very difficult to put these systems to work day by day for a long time and having users happy with them, okay? So I understand your question. It's a very good one. And we have some of these features because we analyze the whole set of solutions, either they come from the data-driven or the knowledge-driven approach. By the way, the semantics that we are developing, because this, you mentioned also this, it's difficult to build the system. And if you build for one meeting room, maybe for the other meeting room, it's not exactly the same, but there is a lot of things that you can reuse. And when we are developing these semantics, we are not just keeping them at the conceptual level, at the modeling level, we are developing operational semantics. So our system, I believe it contributes to make it easier to lower the human effort in programming when you want to replicate your solution, although you have to make some changes because it's not exactly the same thing.
Yes, thank you.